Se van a morir conmigo. Se van a
The Wade and Carter Show is a paid programming, and KHMC Magic 95 assumes no responsibility for its content. And the Wade and Carter Show is a paid programming, and KHMC Magic.
Wow. Bear with me. Folks, sorry about that. I don't exactly know what I've done there. I could be in over my head. Bear with me there, folks. I don't know what I did exactly. It's just what happens when Ash isn't here. I apologize. It's the inept morning with Brent. I don't know what I did. I've got to fix that, so just bear with me for a minute here. Ash, call me, 575-9509. Need you now. I don't know how to mute the music here. Yeah, I can stop that, I think. Ash, I don't know how to mute the music here. Need you now. Yeah. I'm in a quandary. It's not good. It's all bouncing around. I don't know how to mute the audio here. It's not good. It's all bouncing around. What if I do that? I don't know how to mute the audio here. Ash goes in and mutes the audio. Somehow he clicks on something and mutes the audio. I've got the time, so just bear with me. But I don't know how to do it. If you know how to do it, call me, 575-9509. It used to be frustrating. Now I find it somewhat humorous. 575-9509. When I plug the video, the feedback in, when I plug the feedback into the iRig, then I'm going to have problems. Let's see what happens. Is that better? How about that? Oh, good morning, folks. I think now that I have overcome my ineptness, so let's see what happens. I'm not going to do all the da-da-da-da-da-da. All right, so here's the deal. Let's get this done. The Wade and Carter Weather is brought to you by Deerland Feed. For everything you need except the mute button, call Deerland Feed. Get by there. You need fence post. You need hog wire, chicken wire, pesticides, fertilizers, saddle, tack, all the things you would expect farm and ranch. Deerland Feed is your go-to. They also provide the weather to let you know it's 72 degrees in Victoria today. It's going to go all the way to 82 degrees under cloudy skies. And the rest of the week, all the way through the weekend, is going to be sunny. So we have that going for us. I apologize for the technical difficulties. It is humbling. It's good. It lets me know that it's always good for me to have Ash around. If we had a budget, we'd have a producer. Most shows of this magnitude have somebody to run the stupid board. If you people could see all the buttons that I've got to deal with over here, It is ridiculous. It's not fair, and I'm not proud of it. But there was no training. They just said, here, mouthpiece, go in there and do what you do. So I apologize for my ineptness. You'll notice it said Winging It Wednesday. Very excited today. Many of you that know me will know what a big step today is. Today we're going to have as our guest George Coleman. Mr. Coleman is the general manager of the Victoria Advocate. Very excited to have him come in. We're going to talk about his product, his vision for the future of newspapers in general, and specifically for the Victoria Advocate, your local newspaper. 175 years it's been here? Yeah, 175 years. Now think about that. It was here 75 years when Chesnick Furniture showed up. I mean, people stood and read the paper because there was no furniture. Think about that. Interesting. Let me see who's checking in. The sympathetic masses. I appreciate you folks bearing with me in my ineptness. It's the ability to say, I just saw my daughter Kendall's there. I can't wait to talk to her. The ability to overcome, the ability to get through your own stupidity that most often makes us Americans. BJ Nelson says it's going to be a great day. Bobby Leister checks in. Chris Jansen, hello, sir. H.R. Mallory. Lisa Poole. Karen Lee Webb. Steve Kidder. Andy Rhea Jr. David Glass. Judge Posey, sir, good morning. Kendall says, good morning, Dad. Good morning, sweetheart. You'll never see me sweat. See, it's not that I don't care. It's just that I've made bigger mistakes than not knowing what I was doing. That's not knowing what you're doing. It's just really not that bad if you just power through it. 177 YouTubers, thanks to Razor IT Solutions. Let's see what else I can dig up here. I'm trying to get down here where I can scroll these people. BJ Nelson says, hi, Dawn. So somehow that my wife got involved. Good morning, T-Lat. Robin Moore Knipling, Justin Glass, Jeremy Pena, CW Bean. Hello, Arthur O'Brien out in Sacramento, California. Hope you're well. Madeline Mayer. Ashley McGee. Good morning, Ashley McGee. I tell you what, we get these storms, get this rain going. We can all go get a kayak, get in with Ashley McGee and whitewater raft through Riverside Park. It's usually about a nice hour and a half, 2 hour cruise on the kayak. We can do it now in like 18 minutes. It's like microwave kayaking. We can do that. Patrick Strauss. There's Lacey Dearlam. Rosenquist, good morning. BJ Nelson says, technology. No kidding. Steve Kidder says, phone a friend. I reached out to Ash. You can tell Ash is on vacation, sleeping in, most important hour of the day in Victoria. He's sleeping in. Marvin McCush checks in. Jeremy Pena. Hey, there's one of my best buddies, Stephanie Wright. Hello, ma'am. She's in Elkhart, Indiana. I love that. I love that people check in from all over. We always thank our friends from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Steph, I hope you're doing good. We had a little storm down here. We're going to get the man that runs the paper here in a minute. Today's front page basically says, storm, no big deal, which is pretty much what it was. I finally did get the volume down. I know it. Now I know what I did. I just left this echo up. It's my bad. Patrick Strauss, Tammy Williams. There we go. H.R. Mallory. HR says, check the TCP ICP settings and set up another socket. What? HR, he's a trooper. Good morning, Sheriff Louderback. Had some flooding over in the Edna area. Interesting, it's kind of like the usual suspects. There's places that flood. If you lived in Harlingen, the Harlingen Country Club, of all places, the Harlingen Country Club floods. Water seeks a level. It does not discriminate. I find that interesting. Barry McHenry, good morning. Lacey Merriman, that's Judge Zeller's sister, or Judge Zeller is her brother. How about that? Lacey, good morning to you. Ron Sitka, Alton retired, never at rest. It's a good man right there. I hope you're well, my friend. Oh, let's see. Blah, okay, we go. Oh, they're talking about. See, so James Kirk picked up that HR was using some type of military jargon on me. Cedar Bean says, I'm okay, but don't go on a spaceship. What if we find out someday that we're actually on the spaceship? There's my friend Rena Shear. Thank you. Kendall says the show must go on. It's kind of like if you're trying to sell a car, Kenny, and you walk out there and your pants split. I mean, you still got to sell the car, right? You got to sell the car. Let's see. So Steph Wright says hi to Kendall. Steve Kidder points out that the Victoria Advocate is the second oldest newspaper in Texas. You know, I wonder who has the oldest newspaper, and I'm going to tell you, and George will probably know, but it's not a better paper than the Advocate. I mean, the oldest paper, it's not going to be the Dallas Morning News. It's going to be like the Paducah, Pallet. It's going to be something like that. Heather Monroe checks in. That's Munro. That's how you know she's Canadian. It's very hooked on phonics, very efficient. Andrea Koenig, right there. And Ron, I couldn't agree more. Ron Sika says, love the new paper. Was glad to be a part of it for a couple of years. Chris Conrad. Steve Kidder says, everybody's an idiot at something. I'm educatable though. I'm just ignorant. There's just things that I just know that I'm ignorant of. Michael Jolly, the Iceman is in. Peter McNally, good morning, sir. Peter McNally just says B. I don't know. I'm B. He's like a philosophy guy. M. Then I get canoes and waves and green hearts from Ashley McGee. I get it. She loves to whitewater raft. There we go. Scott Snow. Wow, what a crew. I'm going to get Mr. Coleman in here in a few minutes. It's an interesting dynamic. People are like, ooh, you're going to have a guy on from the newspaper. And I'm like, we don't compete with the newspaper. I mean, number one, the newspaper is charged with having credibility. We're just a flippant radio morning talk show who has the advantage oftentimes of having a story before the newspaper can get it in. But that puts a little pressure on Ash and me to get it right. We try to alleviate that pressure by cutting up with our audience so that we don't get held accountable. I think, and I'll be curious to see what Mr. Coleman says, but I would imagine that one of his goals is to never have to issue a correction or a retraction, because that usually means somebody got in there a little too early. There's a fine line between it being news and being correct. So we'll talk about that. A couple of quick hits for you, some things to talk about. What's great is it gives me the chance to go ahead and take this first break. I'll give you a couple of the quick hits I saw in the morning news, and then I really want to spend as much time with Mr. Coleman as he can. So first of all, Allen's Wrecker Service, 578-6300. Allen is your go-to tow-to. That's just the way it is. If you have a breakdown, you have an accident, you flip a car, you have a big rig that goes off the road into a ditch, Allen is the guy you call. It's well known here. 578-6300. That's Allen's Wrecker Service. The VCS companies, Rocket Oilfield Services, and the only locally owned and authorized AT&T retailer. That's who sponsors the studio. That's our go-to. The VCS companies, whether you need fire suppression, fire detection, if you need an alarm system, if you need surveillance, now in this modern era, if you have a large group coming and you need to monitor temperatures as people walk through a room, they can monitor up to like 15 people at a time. Then you can, call out the sick one if you need to. The VCS companies, reach out to them on Kerr Boulevard. Chesnick Furniture Company, I mentioned them earlier, 100 years. They were in downtown Victoria when it was just Victoria. Corner of Wanlin and Bridge, they've been there for 50 years or 70. One up 50, I think. Think about that. Since 1950. They've been there 70 years. That's crazy. 116 West Wanlin, the corner of Wanlin and Bridge, celebrating 100 years in business with 50% off on all furniture. Lots of 50s and 70s there. Just know this. Chesnick's been there a long time. They're going to be here a long time. They stand by their product. They'll deliver it today. You just do better at Chesnick. Chesnick and Love make your house a home. So the media is reporting coronaviruses Today's the magic number, 200,000 dead in the U.S. You know, we've already talked about, we've even had the CDC say, well, maybe 6.5%, 7% of those were really just corona. The rest are comorbidities. You've heard us say it here. If you're old, sick, or fat, stay healthy. If you're old, sick, or fat, you may die of corona. Be careful. Okay? Hey, if you can't swim, don't jump in the deep end of the pool. Just common sense things. Just trying to save your life. But make a note, and I know I'm thinking like a Republican here, 200,000 dead nationwide, 22 million jobs lost in the pandemic paranoia. 22 million jobs. That's 110 jobs gone for every person that has passed, even remotely attributed to the coronavirus. Now think about that. Man, I've got a little bit of a cough. Wow. 110 people lost their job. Bam. Just like that. You got to think about those numbers. They're crazy numbers. 22 million jobs, over 200,000 lives. Bad times. Hate to see it. Trump administration reporting that 10 million of those jobs have come back. We'll see. You know, I don't know what level now. The Democrats are saying that they're coming back disproportionate to the way we had them, that they're coming back with fewer opportunities for women, minorities, and especially blacks. I have not seen that. I don't know that. I know that that's politics. We'll figure out how to ferret through that in a little while. Don't forget to wear your seatbelts. A Victoria man passed the other day, 46-year-old guy driving down Salem Road, flipped his truck a couple of times. What happened? Got thrown out of the truck. No reason to die. Wear your seatbelt. We had it earlier, I think last week. Lady wrecked a car, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, 2 of them perished. Can't have it. It's very simple. Number one, it's the law. Number two, it's so easy. Every car has a seatbelt now. Don't get thrown from a vehicle. Don't die needlessly. The streets are wet. Be careful. Sometimes we joke about, hey, just call Allen's, but we don't want you to have to call Life Flight. Wear your seatbelt. Los Angeles Dodgers clinched their 8th straight National League West title. They're starting to remind me of the Braves, the Atlanta Braves of the 90s. They win. Then it comes down to money time and they can't win. They're pretty good, though. They're like 36-17, something like that. You're looking at a team that's probably the best team in baseball, much like they said a couple of years ago the Yankees were the best team in baseball. I think the Astros make the playoffs. I haven't really been watching that much sports. Found it interesting that Denny Hamlin, old driver, NASCAR driver, bought a NASCAR team along with his partner, the guy with all the money, Michael Jordan. Thought that was interesting. MJ comes in, says, I've been interested in NASCAR. I'm intrigued with NASCAR and their stance, their switch of stance, if you will, on social justice and injustice. You'll recall that earlier in the year, NASCAR banned the display of the Confederate flag at their events. I thought it was great. They did. That's brilliant. Proud of them. So they did that. That's good. So now you've got Michael Jordan coming in. I find it interesting, though. Now, Michael Jordan is a champion at everything he does. They make a big deal out of the fact, they don't make a big deal out of the fact that another billionaire owns a NASCAR team. They make a big deal out of the fact that he's only the second black team owner in NASCAR. Okay. To me, Michael Jordan transcends race. I mean, he's the greatest ever. To me, he's not a black man. He's Michael Jordan. He's MJ. Like he's Magic Johnson. Like he's Muhammad Ali. I didn't say Muhammad Ali, the great black boxer. He's Muhammad Ali. He doesn't even matter what color he is. I find it interesting that Michael Jordan hired Bubba Wallace, who is the recently unemployed black NASCAR driver, the only black driver on the circuit. Interesting, because he's not the best driver in NASCAR, no matter what color he is. The road doesn't know what color you are. I'm surprised that Michael Jordan, the perennial champion, hired a guy basically because he's black. Isn't that the opposite of what we try to do? I don't know. We'll see how it works out. Bubba won't. If Michael Jordan's spending $100 million a year on a NASCAR team, Bubba Wallace better get faster, or Bubba Wallace will be unemployed again because Michael Jordan doesn't lose at what he does. Peter McNally says, Brent, your comments yesterday, maybe even today, on COVID were insensitive and too broad. Some deaths are young people, healthy. Stay safe. Let me tell you, I did emphasize this yesterday. Picture that herd of wildebeest. They're going across the Serengeti. All the leftist people always want to talk about, we're animals, we're a part of nature, we're an integral part of it. Okay, then let's be part of nature. That wildebeest herd's going across the Serengeti. You got the elderly, they get left behind. The sickly, they get gobbled up by the hyenas and the lions and the tigers. Every now and then, they got to cross a river. Now, when the crocodiles of the Serengeti have an opportunity, every now and then, they're going to get a healthy wildebeest. I've even seen the National Geographics where the healthy wildebeest wrangles himself free from the crocodile and gets out of the river, bleeding but alive. It's the exact same thing with the COVID. Nobody wants to talk about it. College kids get it en masse. En masse, they get it. Hospitalizations, zero. Zero. College kids aren't going to the hospital. College kids are going home. The old, those with comorbidities, if you've got diabetes, if you've got heart problems, if you are, as most Americans are, grossly overweight, if you're fat, you may die of the COVID. Other than that, go to work. Sorry, Pete, the numbers don't bear you out. My empathy level is high. My reality check is consistent. So, Jeff Fonseca, I heard this morning on Outkick Your coverage that 48,000 college students, 48,000 have tested positive since classes started. Two have been hospitalized. There's those two. You know what you're going to find out about them later? Billy's got a bad heart valve. Cindy's got multiple myeloma. We didn't know that until she went to the hospital for COVID. I'm telling you, it is what it is. The Iceman says, weather has folks' allergies out, sinus flaring up. We don't have COVID, just saying. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, BJ Nelson, how many have been hospitalized for overindulging or mononucleosis? Remember when mono was a big deal? I think mono, like college kids quit worrying about mono when herpes became a big deal. And then kids were like doing trading cards, like, give me herpes now, just don't give me that AIDS stuff. And you start going around and just good old mononucleosis. It's like off the chart. Nobody's looking at that anymore. Make you just as sick. Michael Jolly agrees Michael Jordan is the GOAT. And Tammy McElroy Williams comes in with Bubba Can't Drive. You are right. BJ Nelson says, who's the guest? All right. I'm going to get him in here. You have time, Mr. Coleman? I've got a headset for you. I'm even going to turn your mic on. See, the old Advocate would have had you in, but they wouldn't have turned your mic on. See, I'm going to turn your mic on and get yourself covered. They keep you on a tether there, but I'll give you some space. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. You're going to want to talk right into that. And I sprayed it with Lysol, and let me see what we've got here. How about if I do that? And then you just you can move it, make yourself comfortable, but just talk right into it. Cedar Bean says he likes it when I get on a rant. I'm sorry. It's an hour, and it's not like the Advocate. You can't just work with it, and then say, there's my baby, and send it out to the public. It's like, this is live. I didn't know what I was going to say this morning. These are my notes. This is an hour show. There's my notes. Wow. So yeah, it's not much. I did want to pass along also, and I found this interesting. I saw this morning on the internet. The Texas State men's basketball coach, I don't know his name, doesn't matter, resigned amid, have you seen this?
No.
Resigned amid allegations that he had used racially insensitive comments in practice to his players. It blows my mind that in this day and age that coaches don't really, Basketball coach, Texas State, probably makes $800,000 a year. No kidding. It's a D1 program. You cannot jeopardize your entire career by telling black players, if you keep playing like that, you're going to end up working at Popeyes. That's one of the things he said. Now I grew up with a lot more abuse from a lot nicer guy. I mean, Coach Smith would tell me that, Carter, you're going to end up working at Popeyes. You're terrible. But you find it amazing that people, lash out like that at players. Look, see, there's Peter McNally. Do you know Pete?
Don't know.
Super nice man, very intelligent man. Leans a little bit more left than I do personally, but certainly is at least every bit as much an American and a Texan as I am. And he says, look at that. Support your local newspaper. Go Advocate.
Well, thank you, Peter.
I'm proud to have you here. Tell me a little bit about give me your history with the Advocate and how you got, what you're doing now. Tell people what you're doing.
Oh, sure. I've been at the Advocate since July of last year. I came from Tennessee. I worked for a family-owned newspaper operation there for 26 years, and thought I was going to retire there. But the family had decided to disperse of some of the properties. Mine was one of them. I was running a daily and 2 weekly newspapers in Middle Tennessee. And one of the fellows I used to work with there was down here in Texas, Ben Tyler, Chief Revenue Officer of the M. Roberts Media Company. He said, George, I hear that you're selling your paper and the company that's buying out doesn't keep management. You may want to come down here. I got a job running the advertising department in Victoria with your name on it. Now, coincidentally, our younger daughter, who lives just outside of Austin in Cedar Park, had told us our first grandchild was going to be born in January of 2020. And so my wife was saying, so your job's going away, you got a great offer, and you're going to be like a couple hours from our first grandchild. Do you need a burning bush?
Right. That's just God telling you, come on.
It's time to come to Texas.
Absolutely. Well, welcome. And there's a long tradition of Tennesseans coming to Texas. I mean, Davy Crockett,
Yeah, the Alabama, we are called volunteers.
So as you walked out of that, when you walked out of that newspaper the last day, did you say, you may all go to hell? I am going to Texas? And that's what Davy Crockett supposedly said.
Nah,
there you go.
The staff people are great people there, just like they are here.
Fantastic. Yes. It's management we have a problem with, George. Now let's take a quick break, and then I want to delve into some of your stuff because I'm very interested. There's Jim Hartman right there. Jim Hartman is the kingpin of the VCS companies. Great friend, great support of the show. Vera Cruz Restaurant. Get by Vera Cruz today. Drowning enchilada plate, Mexican plate. Today's Caldo Wednesday. If you get in there, you're going to have this. They call it caldo de res. It's beef and corn and potatoes, and it's a great Mexican stew. You will love it. They're famous for it. Go by there today if you haven't had it and eat. If you don't, you can't have it the rest of the week. They only do it on Wednesdays. But you can get a taco salad. You can do whatever you want. Razor IT Solutions. JP Hull was in yesterday talking about analytics and data and encryption. Razor IT Solutions is your resource as a business owner. You want to collect money on the internet. You want to tie things into your QuickBooks from Facebook and the internet. JP's your guy. Reach out to him. He'll take care of you. The Adson Alford dealership since 1926, Victoria's dealer. Chevys, Cadillacs, Mazdas, Mitsubishis. They've got it all. Pre-owned, paint and body shop. They do all models and makes and model of service. I've got to take Dawn's car over there. I didn't buy it at Adson Alford. Her next one will be from there. But they're going to fix it. She's going to get her oil changed and all that. That's what they do. BJ Nelson, great friend of the show, voter registrar, hosted an event out here, always giving back to the community. She and her husband, Scott, own White Trash Services. 550-1826. If you're in a 6-county region, way outside the range of Magic 95.9. But if you're listening to us and you happen to live in any of the surrounding counties or Holiday Beach or Rockport, White Trash Services will come to you. Roll off dumpsters, whatever you need. They'll hook you up. So now what part of Tennessee were you in? Everybody knows where Nashville is.
Sure. I was about 25 minutes east of Nashville in a town called Lebanon, Wilson County, Tennessee.
Lebanon, Tennessee. I've heard of that, but I don't know why, but I know I've heard of it.
Well, it's the corporate headquarters of Cracker Barrel.
There you go.
That's our claim to fame.
There you go. Well, so when the last time I was over that way was, I mean, it might have been 20 years ago, probably was. And I went through, like, drove out of Nashville and ended up like out in Franklin and all that. It's just gorgeous country.
Beautiful state. And I had spent about 20 years in East Tennessee prior to that with the company's holdings of those newspapers. And that's where the mountains are, not too far from Gatlinburg and the Smokies, and a little different climate there, but still very, very beautiful.
Tell me about, so you came over and you went into the advertising department, and then everything happened at the Advocate, and they all of a sudden said, that George's a pretty nice guy.
Yeah.
Let him do it.
Well,
How did that go?
It was one of those situations. COVID-19 has had an impact on everybody, and an impact on us too. So I got a call in May saying that we made some changes. We've discontinued the printing of the Monday paper in order to get some savings there. We've had we actually had a temporary situation where everybody making over a certain amount of year took a temporary pay cut, which was later restored, but just to kind of get us through the tough patch. And then the third phase was that we're going to do some structural changes, not only in Victoria, but at all the papers in the group. And I was asked, you've got a background with much deeper experience than just advertising. Do you have the bandwidth to help out and do other things? And in those circumstances, what are you going to say?
Yeah, you got to do it, right? It's part of the team.
You're part of the team.
And you're close to the grandkids.
Yeah. So how can I help is what was said. So a few weeks later, I got a call from the president of the company and said, we want you to take over the news side of the operations. And that was what, of course, Chris was doing. And I said, "What does that mean? He's going to report to me?" I said, "No, he's going to be part of the ones that are gone." And it was regrettable. It was not anything that we wanted to do to begin with, but it was one of those hard decisions the family said they needed to make. And with my background, I was glad to help. The newsroom, of course, was very upset. They all had been hired by Chris or had worked with him forever.
Right.
So he was loved and revered, and I had to explain to them my background, because they say, "What does an ad guy know about running a newsroom?" And so I'm not just an ad guy. I ran a newsroom for 3.5 years before coming here. I had a good editor. You're a good team, and I think we've settled things down. So that's kind of how the transition took place. It was totally unexpected.
So here's how you get my crowd, right? So Matt Boucher, our ag extension agent, says, "Howdy, George." So that's okay. But Jeff Fonseca says, "If I was blind, I would swear Bob Ross was our guest." And that'd be, they're just happy accidents. The painter, Bob Ross, because you have a very calming, can you imagine getting chewed out by George Coleman? Now look, I'm serious. This is bad. You're really dropping the ball here. Do I need to speak louder? I will raise my voice if I need to. Now, I'll tell you what our feedback is. I have a very, by and large, Lacey Merriman says you have to learn how to use y'all now. But we have a conservative listener base. Fortunately have a very large listener base. It grows constantly, and something you got over years ago, but we feel a certain pressure now to get it right. There's things that come up. You'll wake up and at 5 a.m. and you start scanning the internet. You start scanning anything that's on the internet. We try to confirm 3 or 4 different sources. Usually somebody that you feel you have some experience with, that you feel comfortable with. I still will go to the networks. If NBC, not MSNBC, but if NBC reports something, I'll give that a look. I'll consider that kind of a confirming source. If the stories jive, then sometimes we go with them. Just trying to give folks an overview of the day. But you'll recall, we've dealt with so many tumultuous things in the country, from the George Floyd to the Jacob Blake to Breonna Taylor, that rush to judgment doesn't always let you see both sides of the pancake. So we've done our best to kind of back up a little bit, even though we have the ability to say, "Oh, this just in." I mean, literally can say, "This just in." The story did change. Mm-hmm. How do you put weight on a story? Not even like a local story, but or let's say a local story, but it's got some weight to it. How do you put weight on it that let's go with that? Let's go ahead and get out there what we know without having to fill your whole story full of, we believe, we've been told, we're trying to confirm, because that's just like blah, blah, blah. You almost have to make a statement, but how do you make that statement? How do you weigh the confidence you have that you're getting it right? Because we do know from experience that getting it wrong ruins people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So you're obviously a nice man. By the way, I've had several of our elected officials, several, who did nothing to accommodate the advocate that they didn't have to do, have told me, he's an engaging fellow. He's a nice man. I feel confident speaking to the advocate again. And that's you were here after a lot of things happened. And so be honest about something, which I don't expect you to be anything else. How many people warned you about coming on this show? Don't you sugarcoat it.
Well, I didn't tell anybody I was coming.
Okay, good. That's smart. Because if you would have told somebody that you were coming on this show, they'd go, whoa, be careful, man. That guy hates the newspaper. And it's just not true. I have been on record here saying, hey, great. I mean, the paper has made not an about face. It's just gotten, I'm looking at today's paper. And Tuesday's a slow news day. We always know it is. Beta brings flooding to low-lying parts of Edna. Really, the headline could say, nothing to report here. Just on the edge, Beta brings floods, little damage to Calhoun County. It rained in Port Lavaca where the storm hit. Officials, city and county fared really well. It didn't really happen in Victoria like we thought it would. It's hard to do it. But now the old advocate would have said, Beta brings flooding disproportionately to minorities in Edna. That's what it would say. It was like there always had to be a negative. There always had to be like every article had to be Watergate. We're going to draw these people in with this angry headline. White people suck. And then you read it says it flooded in Edna the other day. And, it's like, the whole article about Beta flooding is a guy saying, this is pretty normal for us when it rains. I get some water in my yard most of the time. The article says that because that's all there was to report. That's all there was. But how do you know when to go top of the page, page one? I mean, is it a gut feeling you have from years in the business, or do you have a criteria checklist you go through?
Well, no, I think you're asking yourself the question, what are people talking about today? What's on everybody's mind? And with regard to Beta, the fact that it wasn't a big deal was on everybody's mind. There were a lot of concerns about, what could this be?
Hang on, caller.
Issues. So, if we're talking about what are people talking about, that's news.
And it certainly is the news. That is the news, and we're all grateful that that's the only thing we had to report, that there weren't any drownings or, major outages. Hang on one sec. Who we got on the phone? Hello, caller. Scared of you, George.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
So tell me so I know the advocate a while back made the decision to do away with the Monday physical paper. And we have a very educated audience as well. I mean, common sense says that over the next decade or less, that tactile enjoyment you get of holding the newsprint in your hands is going to go away. People will be getting their news from this, those that don't already, or they'll be getting their news from the advocate's website. I mean, and that's got to be a publisher's dream, is that all of a sudden everybody in your reader base would phone a friend, they would all bring a friend, and you could do away with printing that paper, sell your ad space on the internet. People could go in and read and get their news there. It'd be easier to update. It could be more accurate. It could be more timely. And you wouldn't have the expense of printing and delivering a newspaper. But when you do that, you just jump into the realm of competing with me, with everybody else who's got an internet news product. And there's something lost to me when there's not a physical newspaper. I know, I mean, you're old enough that I know you grew up with your father reading the newspaper in the evening. Maybe he got 2 papers a day.
Absolutely.
How do you reconcile that? Like, are we just the dinosaurs that are someday, like my kids, none of my children who are all adults, my 3, they don't subscribe to a newspaper. They don't even subscribe to a news service, which makes me nervous because they're getting all their news from TMZ. They can tell you a lot more about Jay-Z and Beyonce than they can about Trump and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What do we do? Where does it go?
Well, I think what you have to come to realize is the baby boomer generation is what we consider to be the last great generation of the physical newspaper. And
I think it's the last great generation, period.
Well, there's a case to be made for that as well. But the younger people, as you point out, are more interested in getting information online. And it's important to us to make sure we provide that. And that's one thing I told our new staff is that I consider myself to be platform agnostic. And by that, I mean, if you want to read on your phone, on your tablet, on your desktop, on your laptop, if you want to read the physical paper, fine. Whatever you want to do, because what you'll find out, you study companies that have failed, they don't recognize the way the market is shifting. And they just keep on doing the same old thing, hoping things will get better.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
It's not. Sadly, it's not going to get better. It's kind of like if you and I owned a buggy whip company, and we see a car in downtown Victoria in 1914, and you're like, "Wow, that's interesting." And 2 weeks later, we see 3 cars. You're like, "That's kind of catching on. We need to make more buggy whips." At some point, we got to get into the gasket business or something because at the end of the day, the buggy's going away. And I feel like, and I empathize with where you're at because the news isn't going away. The outlet for the news is simply going to change. I mean, the day is coming when the printed page will just go away. I mean, I think right now there's probably more books on tape sold than there are physical books from a bookstore. I think that's kind of sad. I like to pick up a book. I like to look and see how far I am through the book. You know, I've got a whole bunch of books at the house with bookmarks halfway through, like I lost interest. But it seems like when you know the end game in your head, it seems somewhat folly to keep placating the declining base that wants a physical paper. Why not just say, guess what, folks? January 1st of 2021, we're flipping the switch. You're either online or you're out of time. That's the way it's going to go down.
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. I think that a lot of people look at the physical newspaper business and they just say, well, gee, you know, the readership's down and stuff like that. What they don't see is that if I offered a lot of companies the opportunity to have our revenues, our cost structure, and our bottom line, they jump on it in a heartbeat.
Right.
All right. It's still a very good business today. What makes it a very good business is the fact that we do not do things the way we used to do. For example, we recently consolidated our business operations up in Longview. So if you're a subscriber to paper, you're now mailing your checks to Longview. And everybody said, well, why'd you do that? And I said, well, we need fewer people.
Right.
The entire company. I said, well, that's not fair. That's taking jobs away from Victoria. And I said, well, okay. I said, you know what happens if you wake up in Longview in the morning and your paper's not in the driveway like it's supposed to be and you make a phone call in? It comes to Victoria. Yeah. All right, because the entire customer service department for our company is based here.
Right here in Victoria. That's right.
We're moving the customer service aspects around and consolidating them into different locations to serve the whole company in order to be more efficient and lower our cost structure. So, yeah, I mean, every newspaper is a little small company it used to be. But at the same time, we don't have the cost structure we used to have.
Right.
Making smart moves.
Absolutely. Steve Kidder says, I had someone on Facebook call me an idiot because I subscribed to the New York Times. He told him that he needed to watch TV. You know, and TV news to me now has become, my mom and dad are beyond Fox addicts. And I find it interesting. If I was only going to watch one channel, I know what I believe. I know why I believe it. If I was only going to watch one channel, I'd watch CNN because in stereotype, their views are more left-leaning than mine. So I would watch them to either educate myself or bolster what, like, I know I don't agree with that. I would bolster why I believe what I believe. For me, to sit and watch Sean Hannity wax eloquent about Donald Trump is a waste of time. I mean, all I do is go, well, yeah, I agree with that. Well, yeah, that's right. I don't need propaganda about stuff I already believe. So, I mean, I need to learn. I don't need to just listen. So big difference to me than, but some folks are just bound by that.
That's a great point. And we get feedback from people because we'll run something on our viewpoints page to be a very liberal point of view. And they'll say, the advocate believes this. Well, no, the viewpoint page is an opinion page. And we feel it's important to bring opinions totally across the spectrum so everyone can read it, understand what other people are saying, and then make up their own mind with regard to how they feel. And usually when I take the opportunity to chat with folks about that who are initially upset, I say, well, don't you want to hear what those liberals are saying? So you can shoot down those arguments when you have them at that coffee club thing that you go to.
And the advocate welcomes if you want to send in a letter to the editor, you can to I disagree with your viewpoint section.
Perfect.
It's wonderful. I will tell you that, and I'll just pass along. So Bobcat Watley says, my chocolate lab fetches the paper. Still hadn't caught on. There's no paper on Monday. She still gets a biscuit.
Oh, good.
Bless her heart.
Good.
So Michael Jolly says, older generation reading the newspaper, younger generation dancing on TikTok. Which one you want to put the future of the country in whose hands? Some of these older folks have some wisdom. It's probably good. See, James Curtis, when it comes to public notice requirements, to post in the newspaper, would that affect local government requirements if a physical paper went away? I don't know. I think you probably have some kind of a digital platform.
Sure. Everything goes online as well as being in the paper itself. And like I said, the physical paper is not going to be going away for a very, very long time.
I agree. I do think I've always coveted a news source that simply told me what happened. Now, you can go over, like you and I were agreeing a while ago about folks driving around without their seatbelts on.
Mm-hmm.
I want to read that article. I do want to be informed that a person died, they were thrown from the vehicle, they were not wearing their seatbelt. I don't want to read in that article how the advocate feels about seatbelt safety.
You'll see that in the editorial later on.
See, and I agree with that. I know I gave you an idea. You're going to write an editorial. I gave an idea, folks. He's going to write an editorial about seatbelts.
We're going to do it.
But I will tell you that, and that's a fairly benign example. But we've had times in the past, and I promise you, these listeners know, before you got here, where something would happen, and the advocate editorial board would take a position on it. What if this is what happened? And then the next thing you know, their articles started taking on the tone of, we took the editorial as fact, and now we're melding that, mixing that in with the news of this story as we go. And everything became what if there was mismanagement? Amid the gross mismanagement, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whoa. You're intermingling your opinions with the article. How do you feel about, and I don't even know if I have an opinion on this, how do you feel about the newspaper's role in shaping the narrative versus or in addition to telling what happened?
The way you find out what happened is you ask the questions. And it's up to the folks who are asking questions, who oftentimes government officials, to go ahead and take part in the conversation. And part of what I was hearing when I first took over was they felt like their voices were not being heard, their comments were not coming out properly, and as a result, they were very frustrated with some of the things that they saw in the paper. And I said, well, I think we can fix that. And what I've told everyone, I noticed one of the comments that if you'll start putting the truth in the advocate, I'll start reading it. And I said, well, how do you know if I'm writing the truth and I'm not reading it?
Yeah, I get people all the time, I hate your show. Really? What did you? I don't listen to it. Okay. That shows how smart you are.
And I'll give you a really good example, because the stuff that you're talking about can creep in from the most unexpected sources. I had a reader call me and say, you guys are so biased. I'm like, man, I'm really trying to get rid of that. What did we do? And he said, well, there was that story on the Republican National Convention that you had. And I said, well, let's look at it together. So we pulled it on.
Beautiful.
And in reviewing it, there were some points that she had in there where the writer got off on, instead of talking about what was going on at the convention, they started bringing in what was happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which really had nothing to do with the story, which was supposed to be
Right.
about the Republican National Convention. So I went to the editor and I said, okay, this is an Associated Press story. We didn't write it, but we have to be aware that there is bias in the country. Now, I'm just guessing here, but I'm looking at the date line and it said Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So what newspaper do you know of that comes out of Washington, D.C.?
The Post.
All right, and which way do they lean?
The left.
So when you were getting something with a Washington, D.C. byline on
One
it,
of their writers wrote it.
that's right. So the very next day, we were going to have another story, and we looked at it together, and we found 4 paragraphs of stuff that just didn't belong in there because it had nothing to do with the Republican National Convention. And that reader happened to call me back last week, and I said, how are we doing the rest of it? And he said, well, yeah, it looked good. I said, I can tell you, we didn't take those 4 paragraphs out of that story. And you would call me again.
But I want to tell you that, folks, and that right there is why you should give the New Advocate another chance. I'm going to tell you, the majority of these folks listening to the show do not subscribe to the newspaper any longer. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. Under the old regime, that conversation right there never happens. There was you weren't here, so there was a narcissistic air that existed of, you people don't understand what we are trying to tell you. And as you started watching the advertisers go away, the Advocate didn't understand what the public was trying to tell them. And now I think you have brought a fresh vision and a breath of fresh air that's actually, I'm not going, so I think I should probably get the paper for free, just as a media guy. But I'm proud of what is obviously your heart and your sincerity over what you're doing. Quick comments, my Aunt Betty, she's up in Plainview. She says a local community newspaper is something special and uniting to a small community. Our small town's paper no longer delivers, and we're missing it so much. So it's important. It matters to people. She's my dad's sister. She's only like 37 though. Tammy Williams says newspapers should do local heroes sections for war vets, former law enforcement, etc. Celebrate them while they're alive versus in obituaries. Now, the difference, though, Tammy, is we charge for obituaries. If we're going to do pieces, then are people going to, I don't know, George, you got to pay the bills. Somebody's got to pay for that article. Steve Kidder, who happens to be an attorney, please don't hold it against him. How does he feel? How does George feel about the Advocate suing government entities for information?
It's the very last resort. I think normally if you have a good relationship with the government entities, then you won't get to that point. But if there is something that you need to have, because as you should point out, Brett, if you want to have a story, you want to have the right information, and you're entitled to that information under the Freedom of Information Act and not forthcoming with it, are they trying to stop you from running the story? Becomes the question. So
right.
It can happen. It's not positive. It's not the way to move forward in most cases.
If you go down that path, what you see is, and we've all seen it here in town again before you, where it was always information garnered through the Freedom of Information Act, blah blah blah. We talked to Joe so and so about FOIA, blah blah blah, and oh, by the way. The elected official was unavailable for comment, refused comment sometimes, was unavailable for comment at the time of printing. If you take all that out, you find out that there's really no story there. It was always, well, they weren't forthcoming. We had to go pull this information from them. And that all came from the fact that they felt misquoted, misrepresented. They felt attacked. I think that the breath of fresh air that you're bringing in is going to allow a more open communication with elected officials, and you probably won't have to do near as much FOIA stuff as you used to have to do.
And a lot of times you just need to understand what's happening in the background. And I think it was just about my first week on the job. There was a conversation about, do we wear masks? Do we not wear masks? That type of thing. And our editorial board was very excited about the opportunity to do an editorial on recommending that we wear masks. And the first pass on what was written, I thought the tone maybe was a little bit off with regard to what the officials were doing. And I said, look, this is about an issue. It's not about people. It's not about what the judge is doing or the mayor is doing or the governor is doing or anything. It's just how we feel about it. So we changed that editorial to just say, here are the facts of what's going on. And because of these facts, this is what we think should be happening, because if we don't do it, it's going to keep on moving forward. Now, the background on that was I already knew that Mayor McCoy had worked with the city government to extend the emergency order, which he said was step one, and that he was going to be meeting with the executive board of the Chamber of Commerce to get support of the business community, because without the support of the business community, that would be wrong before he could move anything forward. So, here's a guy, think about it. Here's a guy, he's got wheels in motion. He's working hard to do this. He wants to get this done. How positive would it be for the newspaper to come out with an editorial lambasting him for not doing it?
Right. He's trying to do it. That's right.
So that's where that open communication comes in. And we had a conversation. I personally had a conversation with Judge Zeller about it. Not comfortable with it today, not right now. And I thought it was a very fair comment.
He's very forthcoming too. The judge will shoot you straight.
Yeah, and I had some comments where the judge agreed with you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, he was done, and I don't blame him. I mean, it was a bad deal. There was a bottleneck. I think right here, Lacey Merriman, who happens to be the judge's sister, says, "Hey, we'll give the VA another chance. I think the problem is gone now," and I agree, the problem is gone. I'm very encouraged, folks. This is a nice man. The advocate. The Victoria Advocate is one of the great brands really in the state. I mean, it's been around forever. Mike Foreman, by the way, one of the founding sports writers, he was just a cub reporter when the paper began. He started out hawking the paper down by the courthouse. Advocate, a nickel, advocate, a nickel. They moved him up. They let him work in the press room. Then when he was 18, he started writing sports stories, little vignettes. And the next thing you know, he's a feature writer and he's a sports editor. He is 184 years old. You just don't know it. He still wears the bangs. He's a UCLA guy. He's a UCLA guy.
He looks great for
184. He looks great for 184. He's also a vampire. Be very careful. But let me do this. I'm going to give you a pass because I've got to do one more set of ads, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to come in and encourage you to come back. I think that the more that our listeners can relate to the philosophy of the newspaper and what you're trying to accomplish, the more our listeners can help you accomplish that.
Well, great. And I just want to emphasize that the greatest thing that's been happening to me is the feedback I've been getting from the people in the region. Because if somebody sees something, maybe I missed it. Like I said, the AP story, who knew?
Right.
Crazy. I wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about the local writing. I was thinking about what we were running in the viewpoint section. I wasn't thinking about AP because you just think that's straightforward, and it's not always the case. It wasn't for that reader.
Absolutely.
So
the key is that they reached out to you and you listened. It's there. Like I said, there used to be a bottleneck, a disconnect, but now, very much, sir. I appreciate you coming in. I wish you nothing but the best. And folks, that's George Coleman. That's our new managing. I guess we'll call you the general manager of the Victoria Advocate. So thank you so much, sir. I'm going to tell you folks about Uncle, and I'll talk to you. I'll call you. Thank you so much. Fantastic to have George Coleman in studio today. Stay tuned because next you have Brother Gary in here with the Hall of Famer Ralph Salazar. I need to tell you, it's not last, it's not least. It's just now. Uncle Mud's Barbecue. Don't go till 11. They ain't open. You get in there at 11 o'clock. We had turkey last night. It was phenomenal. You got brisket, ribs, sausage, turkey, chicken. They've got it all. They got all the side dishes. They'll take care of you at Uncle Mud's and take care of your group. You want to feed 500? Just give them a heads up. Give them a heads up, and they'll do it. Gray Barn Design. Cheryl's on vacation right now. She's coming back rested. She actually went shopping to buy new things to use as she promotes your next event. 920-6803. That's Gray Barn Design. Went Services, Went Electrical, Went Generators. You need a generator. This storm was just a test. Had this been a real storm, you'd need a generator. Have Generac, Kohler, Cummins, Briggs & Stratton. They've got them all. Reach out to Went. He'll help you with solar panels. He'll help you with battery backups for your solar panels so that at night your refrigerator can run off the battery backup. And then, of course, USA Concrete Coatings. Our friend Charlie Garcia, they're killing it. They're doing great work. They'll come in, they'll seal the cracks in your concrete floor, they'll level everything up, they'll put a polyurethane on there that's antimicrobial, antibacterial. You will love it. Hope you have a great day. It's Wednesday. Get to Veracruz for lunch. I apologize for the early hijinks, if you will, on the board. Let's see what the last comments are. Jeff Fonseca says, believe it or not, Yorktown people can read. Yeah, Richard King says, in the old regime, you would tell the reporter something, and then you read the article, and they got nothing right. And boy, that's true, because it was all based on agenda. So there you go. Jeff Fonseca says, George's peanut gallery approved, and Steve Kidder says, good show. Thank you. Ash will be back tomorrow. I can't wait for that. We love you all. Have a great day. And let's just for grin, see if I can pull off like this. Y'all be good. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Good job, son.
Thank you. He's a nice man. Yep. He's good. You can tell he's a good guy. He's a nice man. Well, I knew that if we didn't do something, you need to reach out sometime. Yeah, have you heard anything? Yeah, oh yeah. Because I mean, it wasn't. I had several people say, "Really, you're going to give them?" So they're talking about like the newspaper matters. Your parents really mad about it. Yeah, I'm like, I want a good newspaper, and I don't think we're in this competition for us. No. I mean, we're not really in the news. The Lord take care of you, take care of them. You're right. Yeah, right. Let the Lord guide you. I told you, He would take care of you. Yes, sir. He had him on the air. He had a good time. He had a good time. He said he enjoyed it. He said, come on, son. That's all. And I said, yeah, you're making your contact right here. Look, you made your contact. That's absolutely right, man. And I think that he's yeah. I don't like that. So I kind of gave him the out, you know. Yeah. Of course, he wasn't even here when Tom was doing a lot of the crazy stuff. I mean, he's coming in fresh. Oh, yeah. He's coming in. We only go here in July. Yes, sir. Yeah. I think when I've been to the meeting, we give us a bit of safety week. Our listeners know how I feel about the advocate, so to give them an attaboy kind of gives them some credibility. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. It's a real deal. Yeah. That's like they're taking it to take it home. All right. Well, I love you guys. Yeah, I would have been better. You got me. be here. Caleb was good and, I like JP.
Yeah, JP was good. What little, and
Caleb's always good.
Caleb's always good.
He's more right wing than me. I enjoyed it.
I got out early to go get newspaper and I listened to the show and I looked at the paper while you were talking.
Yeah, you did good. I love you, Bob. I'll see you this week. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, you better bring it. I'll see you then. Bye, buddy. Yes, sir.